to Justice Quest.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday Frenzy. This is the day that we go ahead and talk about anything and everything, including we got some shockers out there for you today. This is Welcome to Justice Quest. This is the show where we talk about all the good, the bad, the ugly going on out there and how nobody's being held accountable. And we've got everything from banks laundering money for cartels. This is the only show on the internet that's calling for the public execution of these people, of our politicians who dip their hands into the public coffers, and go ahead and set themselves up for sweet deals for the rest of their life, as if they don't have one already. This is a show that calls for law and order, justice. We go ahead and we have our logo right there, the noose. Yep, all channels, all stations, 6 o'clock. Anyway, I kept up the original Deuteronomy 1:13 through 16 because I like it so much. I'm going to go ahead and keep that there for another week or so. But I also added another one, 1 Corinthians 16:13. Where Paul goes ahead and says, watch, quit yourselves like men, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong. Some versions go ahead and drop out the quit you like men, all right? We men have a solemn charge to go ahead and be brave, be courageous. Not be wimpy, nappy. I don't want to do that. I don't want to create a scene. I don't want to cause trouble. No, that's not the way it is. Because in verse 22, Paul says, "If anyone does not love the Lord Jesus Christ, let him be accursed." Yeah, let him be accursed. Man, where to start today? All right, let's go ahead and start with the good. Okay. I chose this one because this is the way how Democrats work. And I hate to say Democrat, but that's what they are. Liberals, progressives, traitors to this country. Trump chooses transparent, and now this is reported by Judicial Watch. Trump chose transparency over a payout. His critics hate that. President Trump rejects potentially billions in damages in his IRS leak lawsuit for a settlement that would fund justice for alleged victims of government abuse. Critics now attack the remedy rather than confront the misconduct it exposes. Don't they always do that? There was some senator back in the 80s and 90s that actually stood on the Senate floor and says, "It's not whether the charges are true or not, it's the seriousness of the charge." Well, even though it's completely false, that had nothing to do with it. I don't know if that was during Reagan's time or Bush's time. I'm not quite sure. Let's see. Last week, the Justice Department announced a new $1.776 million anti-weaponization fund as part of the settlement of President Trump's lawsuit over the illegal leak of his tax returns. Who illegally leaked his tax returns? How come that question's not being asked? Trump did something rare in Washington. He walked away from potentially billions of dollars of direct damages for himself and his company, so the federal government would instead set up a process to compensate Americans who say they were abused by that same government. That is the truth behind this fund, and it is why so many of Trump's political opponents and critics are now lining up against it. They are not objecting because the fund is corrupt, but because it exposes misconduct inside the government that was long downplayed or ignored. We have gone ahead and, this is what I said, The American government has declared war on the honest United States citizen, all right? And this goes ahead and next line goes ahead and proves that statement. For years, Americans watched federal agencies turn their power against citizens on the wrong side of the prevailing political consensus. Yeah. Conservatives were targeted by the IRS. ATF went ahead and targeted Randy Weaver, Ruby Ridge, Waco, the guy down in Waco there. I'm drawing a blank there on his phone. So anyway, and but Judicial Watch is really doing some good stuff. I mean, I got a thing here, Judicial Watch sues CIA for Brennan notes on Obama era briefings. Yeah. Yeah, good things that they've done so far. But, you know, I went ahead and I stamped with Judicial Watch. I mean, they're going ahead and exposing it. And if you're not following their website, you should, you know. Here's another thing in my stack of stuff here. It's called Under the Good. Need to know, Randy Loftus, 47, was sentenced to 51 to 56 years in prison for violently robbing two women in January. One of the women was pistol whipped while she was waiting for a bus, according to prosecutors. The other victim was shot in the face before Loftus stole her vehicle. An Ohio carjacker who shot a woman in the face before tossing her baby into the snow and stealing her vehicle has been sentenced to more than 50 years in prison. Yeah, apparently he didn't have enough money to bribe the judge. That's the only reason he was found guilty. Ronald Loftus, 47, was found guilty in June of 3 counts of aggravated robbery, 4 counts of robbery, 3 counts of felonious assault, 1 count of unlawful use of a weapon by a career criminal. What's he still doing on the street? What is he still doing on the street? I'll tell you what, I read stories like this and I'm getting mad. This guy should have been taken out and hung years ago. 1 count of having weapons under disability, and I don't understand that one. And 1 count of grand theft of a motor vehicle. I mean, this guy, if anybody deserves a death penalty, it's this guy. Holy cow. No whiskey in my coffee this morning. And I guess I need it now. All right. Just joking. Oh boy. This is another good job by what President Trump is doing. At President Donald Trump's Miami hotel, acting Attorney General Todd Blanche recently tried to smooth things over with the conservative watchdog groups whose anger at the Trump administration was building on multiple fronts. Okay. I'll get to that in a minute. In the private speech delivered to Judicial Watch on April 20th, Blanche attempted to showcase how the Justice Department is addressing allegations of voter fraud and weaponization of the federal government. The group's new leader, Tom Fitton, has been critical of the Justice Department and FBI. Well, welcome aboard. I've been critical of the Justice Department and FBI for several years now. I think going on a decade or more. Oh boy, you know, and it goes on and on. And I'm glad, you know, now convictions are starting to roll down in terms of voter fraud. You know, somebody once pointed out that in the last election, Kamala Harris won the states where voter ID was not necessary, but she lost the states where voter ID was mandatory. That tells you something. Fraud was going on there. Oh boy, here's another good one. We're actually finally seeing movements going on there, but you know, but it's going in the wrong direction. All right. We need to go ahead and get dirtbags out of our government that do stuff like this. We don't need to go ahead and be a country where everything's got to be settled in a court of law. No. back when we had traitors to this country, we used to take them out and tar and feather them. We used to hang them. That's not true anymore. Okay, here's another one from the good section. A Virginia judge informed state officials in a Tuesday letter that a newly passed ban on modern semi-automatic firearms was blocked across the state, citing potential for a treacherous patchwork within Virginia. Shortly after Democratic Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, we covered her last week, signed the ban on so-called assault weapons into law on May 14th, pro-Second Amendment organizations, including the National Rifle Association, Gun Owners of America, and Virginia Citizens for Defense League, Second Amendment Foundation, and the Firearms Policy Coalition filed lawsuits seeking to have the ban invalidated on Second Amendment grounds. The letter from Washington County Circuit Judge Jeffrey Campbell extending the injunction to cover non-party cited issues that could arise should someone transport a modern semi-automatic firearm across county lines. The only ones coming out on the top of this mess are the lawyers. They're the only ones making money out of it. Yeah. That's why I said it. The only one going to come out on top are the lawyers. I would be surprised if the courts didn't take and make a bigger mess than it is now. That remains to be seen, but that's kind of my prediction. Let's see. This is a historic victory for gun owners and the rule of law ensured law-abiding Virginia will now have their rights stripped away while our challenge proceeds. Yeah. All right. So the Supreme Court, Virginia went ahead and basically said put a hold on everything. Okay. Well, that's good, I guess. We actually have judges who do their job. Which reminds me, we have a judge running for the Supreme Court here in North Dakota, and I actually called him up and grilled him very hard on some questions. So I'll be watching his career very closely if he wins. So anyway, with that, this is the bad, the good, the bad, the ugly. Yeah, we're going to go there. The United States launched new airstrikes early Thursday, and Tehran responded by targeting U.S. allied Mideast countries in exchange of fire that threatened an interim deal intended to help the end the war in the Middle East. Shelling at night, gunfire by day, and Israel's expanding zone of control in Gaza. Back and forth attacks, yeah. An Iranian official accused the U.S. of launching an airstrike later Thursday, targeting the area around Iran's Seoul nuclear power plant. Other explosions were reported elsewhere in the country during the afternoon. Well, you know what? I thought this Iran thing was already done. I thought we already won. I went ahead and I'll have further more on that, but after I kind of delved into it a little bit, I see why President Trump has gone ahead and extended the war. Apparently Iran's parliament thinks that they're the cat's meow still. Oh boy. Anyway, it goes on. We hit more strike. Does Iran have any more targets left? I mean, we've been bombing them for 2 months, and this latest 2 or 3 week escapade is, oh man. This is the ugly. Remember, we're doing the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to get that out of the way first thing. Billions of dollars in FEMA COVID relief funds went to large organized fraud schemes. This is being reported by Judicial Watch. The famously incompetent government agency, well, show me a competent one, number one. I challenge it. Leave a comment in there. You show me a competent government agency. I'll read it here on the air. Even the Department of Energy, I've been wanting to get rid of the Department of Energy for a couple of decades now because we've studied energy to the last molecule. We know all how it works. And it's still there. It's still collecting dollars. Under the Department of Education, we went from first in the world in education to the 47th or 41st or something like that. We're turning out kids that can't read, and in college they've got to go ahead. Their instructors I read an article that their instructors have got to go ahead and read the book to them because they don't know how to read. They do not know how to read critically. They don't know how to think about what they're reading. But I digress. I don't see anything in the comment section about a competent agency. The famously incompetent government agency created by Jimmy Carter, there's his name again, to provide the nation with disaster relief is involved in yet another scandal for doling out billions of dollars in COVID-19 aid that ended up being spent on fraudulent, wasteful causes that clearly did not qualify for the funding. It marks the latest of many transgressions of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which received nearly $100 billion in supplemental appropriations. People, this is why our government, we are $39 trillion, and I don't even know if we hit 40 trillion yet or not. Now we're $39 trillion in debt. Wow. More than $13.5 billion in pandemic recovery awards went to ineligible recipients and unallowed or unsupported costs investigators found. The disaster relief money flowed to the illicit causes because FEMA failed to implement controls to ensure the funding went to eligible recipients. Yeah, somebody filed a loan on my behalf, and I was supposed to get $67,000 in business aid because of COVID. Number one, I didn't have a business, so at that time. And I went ahead and I tried calling Washington, D.C. Nobody was home. I called every number on the agency's list. Nobody was there. I finally had to call, it was a Small Business Administration, that's what it was. And I went ahead and had to call my local SBA guy and tell him the whole story. And he goes, well, you sure you didn't apply for a loan? I said, no, why would I? I don't have a business. But $67,000 was dumped into my checking account, and I don't know where it was. And then I got a phone call, saying that, hey, why don't you keep $20,000 and send us the balance? Yeah, that would have helped me. I said, no, that ain't happening. Come and get me then if you don't want to get your money. Adding insult to injury, FEMA did not require a state workforce agency to report LWA fraud, hindering its efforts. The efforts of its watchdog to recover stolen funds and combat future fraud. Like, doggone, man, quit handing out money. The records show New York City received $188 million under the Biden administration from a federal shelter program administered by FEMA, and the money was spent on round-the-clock security staffing at a converted Manhattan office building used as a migrant shelter and daily meal delivery to migrants housed in 33 hotels, including major chains such as Ramada, Best Western, Wyndham, and Courtyard Fairfield across New York City. Yeah, FEMA rocked by two other scandals last fall that were exposed in separate investigations. Numerous employees were fired for consuming pornographic content on government-issued devices during work hours. Let's see. Second stand on DH singled out conservative disaster victim with a. Oh yeah. A DHS probe revealed that under Biden administration, FEMA has singled out conservative disaster victims and withheld aid to survivors. Wasn't there something in Kentucky or Tennessee about some town wiped out by a hurricane? They come in and says, "Oh yeah, we'll give you $750." That was it. That was it. You know, and if you had a Trump sign in your yard, you did not get anything. You know. Oh boy. These examples are just a few on a lengthy list chronicling transgressions at FEMA, which emerged into DHS after the 2001 terrorist attacks. Now remember, Department of Homeland Security, I remember George W. Bush Jr., and I call him Junior for a reason. He said he created the Department of Homeland Security and it was supposed to be a small office in D.C. to where the FBI and the CIA can go in and compare intelligence notes. So we don't have something slip through the cracks again. You know, DHS has bloomed into this big thing, including FEMA. They even brought on the airport screeners. They're part of DHS now. And DHS sent out a note to all garbage collectors to watch out for people's trash for anything suspicious. Really? You're going to go through my trash now? Come on. Oh, boy. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I went ahead and downloaded the Supreme Court decision on limiting restriction on marijuana users. Yeah, I said that was a bad idea, because that kind of opens the door to other, things. But anyway, it actually kind of makes sense a little bit. And the court in the 6-3 ruling struck down Hawaii's vampire law, which required concealed carry permit holders to obtain property owners' permission before bringing firearms on private property open to the public, such as stores and restaurants. Justice Alito wrote the opinion joined by Roberts, Thomas, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. The ruling restores the default that licensed carriers may bring firearms on private property unless the owner explicitly prohibits them, affecting similar laws in California, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland. I was on Facebook last night. I ran across this humorous thing. Guy's cleaning his AR-15 on his front lawn, and he hears a commotion over next door. His anti-gun neighbor is getting broke into and robbed, and he's just sitting there going, "Yeah, I'm still cleaning his AR-15." All right, so that's what it is. I think all anti-gunners should go ahead and post a sign on their lawn stating, "We do not believe in guns," Yeah. All these places that post no guns allowed, you're opening yourselves up to being a target. Why do you think schools are being targeted? You never see well, maybe that's not true so much anymore, but there's only been one time since the Fort Hood shooter that there was a gun used on a military base in commission of a crime, and that was in Washington, I believe it was, and it showed the law enforcement people going ahead and storming a barracks, which guns aren't allowed in barracks anyway, So at least I don't know if they are anymore or not. Okay, now let's see. In a unanimous 9-0 decision, the court limited the federal law barring gun ownership by marijuana users. Justice Gorsuch wrote that automatic disarmament based solely on drug use is unconstitutional. The government must show the individual poses a real danger. This ruling narrows the scope of federal restrictions on casual drug users while leaving a room for case-by-case enforcement if danger is proven. Casual drug users, yeah, there it is. Whether you agree with that or not, that's it. And we go ahead and one of the legs of the stool of this program is gun control. We go ahead and we're going to go through gun control here, left and right. So it's going to be, because the Bible says that, you've been bought at a price, become the slave of no man. All right. And throughout the Bible, it shows that, and history shows that, an unarmed civilian populace is going to become a slave, period. And we're going to go through another list through here in a little bit, in the second half of this program. We might go a little overtime today, but that's a good thing. All right. Okay, apparently the U.S. Supreme Court repeatedly declined to rule on whether state bans on AR-15 style automatic rifles violate the Second Amendment, but multiple justices have signaled that a definitive decision is imminent. Okay, well, we're going to see how that turns out. Let's see if they've got a set of cojones or not. The constitutional debate over AR-15 traces back to Supreme Court's landmark 2008 and decision in District of Columbia versus Heller. Heller established that the right extends to weapon in common use at the time for lawful purposes such as self-defense, while carving out an exception for dangerous and unusual weapons. I don't care what your view on this is. If you believe that the Second Amendment doesn't cover the AR-15, you're stupid. You're just plain stupid. It works just the same way as any other rifle out there. It's just that the left has taken the time to demonize this thing. And if you believe that, you're just as stupid as they are. Yeah, dangerous and unusual has become the central battleground in assault weapons litigation. Yeah. Oh, boy. It's no different. It works no different. You pull the trigger, a bullet spits out the front end. It's just the M16 is used by the military. The AR-15 is just a semi-automatic version of it. If the Supreme Court rules against the AR-15, you're going to see an uprising in this country that's going to be akin to the Second Revolution. Lower courts have uniformly upheld the bans. Yeah. And the Seventh Circuit Court has similarly upheld bans. In June 2025 to 2025, the court affirmed Cook County, Illinois' assault weapons ban in Viramontes versus Cook County, a separate challenge to the statewide Illinois Protect Illinois Communities Act, proceeded through the district court. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's what I'm saying. All they got to do is go ahead and say, we're here to protect our children, therefore we got to ban guns. We're here to go ahead and protect Illinois Communities Act. They just attach Anybody remember the Net Neutrality Act? You know, the level of net neutrality so that people would support it. It didn't have nothing to do with net neutrality at all. It said all it did was uphold that if you want unlimited internet, you're going to pay for it. Yeah, there was no such thing. There wasn't a net neutrality at all. So that's what I'm saying. Before you look at a thing, you know, read what it's about. You know, North Dakota went ahead here several years ago and decided that they weren't going to go ahead and allow abortion anymore. So they created an anti-abortion bill, and they put it on the ballot. Okay, now I'll be the first to admit I read it and I had to go. It was complicated, you know. It didn't say anything straightforward like the state of North Dakota is hereby going to ban all abortions. You know, it was, you know, full 2 paragraphs long, but it never once. But the left went ahead and killed that bill because they started circulating the rumor that it's against in vitro fertilization. And I read the bill, and there was nothing about in vitro fertilization there at all. At all. But that's how they do it. They go ahead and start rumors, and, you know, people voted it down. Because of disinformation. That's why I don't listen to the mainstream media on pretty much anything. You can go ahead and, you know, this is on Judicial Watch again, you know, and it's there. The Legal Clarity Team published July 1st, 2026. Yep. And other news, we'll go ahead and we'll label this as part of the good. There was a massive pro-America rally marched on in New York City. You know, they were, oh man, they were waving U.S. flags. They were sitting there praying. They were sitting there having a big celebration about America. And it's about time. It is about time. The only thing I wish is they'd have taken out Mondami while they were there. In other news about that, you know, U.S. flag was flown upside down at a Somali rally in Minnesota. Yeah. They were celebrating Somali Independence Day, and they went ahead and put the flag upside down. Well, those of you who don't know, an upside down flag means we're in distress. Yeah, we are in distress. We're at a tipping point here, people. We need to go ahead, and I am the only one calling for get every Muslim out of here. Get them out of this country. Biden and Obama flew them in here, populated our major cities, okay, and they're the ones who go ahead and control the rest of the state, all right? And if you don't believe me, Western Journal goes in has a short film, Islamic mullahs stating that the Quran will replace the Constitution. They will kill anyone who resists. Yeah. I'll read that again. The Quran will, the Islamic mullahs state that the Quran will replace the Constitution and they will kill anyone who resists. Well, that's what they're doing everywhere else. In Africa, 500,000 Christians have been slaughtered by the Muslims, and nobody's batting an eye. Nobody's batting an eye. I'm the only one I know that mentioned it. Massachusetts governor this is the ugly, gave $100 million in taxpayer dollars to illegal alien invaders. Yeah. Man, how could you not read this and not get mad? In other matter, dark money letters reports Vatican laundered mafia money for 30 years. Banker who discovered it was found hanging in London, and it was ruled a suicide. Yeah. Funny how they do that, huh? Dark money letters, again, reports that the CIA created a crack cocaine epidemic in LA to fund Contras in Nicaragua back in the 80s. Gary Webb exposed it. He committed suicide with, get this, 2 bullets to his head. Yeah, and was ruled a suicide. That's one of the reasons I don't trust the FBI and the DOJ anymore. These people are being funded by American tax dollars. This is the money that we slave 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, to go ahead and provide for our families. And the government comes out there and takes a huge chunk of it out in the form of income taxes. And then they take out more in road taxes, sale taxes, all sorts of different taxes. I went in and I documented, I called up the Congressional Budget Office and I asked for a list of taxes that the government has. They looked at me like I was off my rocker. Really? Why don't we trust the FBI and DOJ anymore? Well, let's go ahead and cite a few of the reasons. There's that COVID fraud. How many people have gone to prison over the COVID fraud? None. How about the Epstein files? Who's gone to prison over that? None. There was Benghazi. Oh, yeah, Hillary Clinton was linked into that one. Who's gone to jail for that one? None. Russia collusion. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton were involved in that one up to their necks. Who went to jail for that? No, nobody. Ukraine fraud. Who went to, oh yeah, there were billions in Ukraine fraud. Billions with a B. Who went to jail over that one? None. Open border. Who went to jail for that one? None. Funding the Muslim immigration. Hell, Barack Obama who went ahead and brought them over here. And that continued under Biden. And now they want to take over our government. They want to take over the country. No, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. In other news, Wachovia Bank processed $380 billion with a B in Mexican cartel money. They were fined $160 million with an M. No one went to jail. If I owned a savings and loan, and I laundered money for, local drug dealers, I'd go to jail. These people don't. These people don't. We need law and order back in this country, people. Oh, yeah, here's what we get to at the end of the show. Gun control history. I'm going to read a few of these. And this is not by any means an all-inclusive list. This is just some of the more well-known ones. 1929, Soviet Union establishes gun control. And from 1929 to 53, 20 million dissidents were murdered. That's why we have freedom of speech in this country. So we can go ahead and disagree with what our government is doing without fear of being imprisoned or shot, like they were over in Europe. In 1911, Turkey instituted gun control. 1915 and 1917, 1.5 million Christians exterminated. Oh yeah, the murder of Christians is nothing new. Why Why is that? Because that is the one true religion. Jesus Christ come to us and says, I am the way, the truth, the way to the Father. End of story. If you don't believe in me, you're not going to get there. 1938, Germany. We're all familiar with that one. 13 million Jews and others were rounded up. 6 million Jews exterminated. 1935, China. When it instituted gun control. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million dissidents rounded up and exterminated. How about that? Then there was Pol Pot. He did the same thing. 1970. Now, I researched this one back when I was a kid. 1970, Uganda. Idi Amin. He went ahead and Uganda was a pretty peaceful country before he came to power. And after he came to power, he wanted absolute power. And I remember seeing him on the news in the 70s with Entebbe hijacking, But he was a dictator, and he was a cruel and sadistic dictator. Again, 300,000 Christians exterminated. Idi Amin went ahead and created a false problem that didn't exist, kind of like what we had in this country too. Oh yeah, we got to control crime. We got to go and get rid of guns, blah, blah, blah. This thing is older than history itself. Back in the Old Testament, I found a reference there that the Philistines went ahead and forbade blacksmiths in Israel because they might make swords and spears. Africa, 500,000 Christians murdered by Muslims. Press is silent. I'm the only one I know bringing this up. I don't know how many times we have to go through this, ladies and gentlemen. But the time for going ahead and calling to action and screaming for justice, true justice, not justice as they see it, because they've declared war on the honest American citizen. And I read that quote from Judicial Watch. They did the same thing. Oh, man. If we go ahead and keep electing dirtbags into public office, this is what we're going to get, the chaos that does. We have the chaos that ensues. We have to elect Bible-believing Christians in good standing in the church that won't be corrupted. Because they know that we're all going to face judgment one day. And we will have to give an account for what we do. That one senator from New York, I forget what his name was, but he famously stated, and believe it or not, people, I read that scripture from Psalms that says, I will shoot arrows into the speech of evildoers. Well, this was another one, I believe, was from the Lord. He went ahead and he stated back about 1999, he absolutely believed in term limits, all right? Because he said that if you can't steal enough in your 4 years here, then you don't belong here. And I forget what his name was that said that, but you know what? The IRS needs to look into him. IRS needs to go ahead and start looking into all these lawmakers who go in to a $175,000 a year job and come out as millionaires. But you won't see it. And I went ahead and called up Kevin Kramer on his radio talk show, and I asked him, I says, you know what, who controls the purse strings? If the FBI doesn't do their job, slash their budget 50% just to get as an attention getter. And every year that they don't do their job, you go in and slash more and more and more. Well, thank you for the encouragement. I went, yeah, right. We go ahead and if we keep electing the the bramble trees to rule over us. That's what we're going to have. Is we're going to have an orchard full of bramble trees, trees that are good for nothing. Right? And that's what we have in Congress. You know, I tried running for the United States Senate here about 8 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. And I found myself frozen out of the system because they'd already made up their choice, you know. And that was that's the way it went. You know, I couldn't get a foothold anywhere. All I did was just keep my name out there. I went and I traveled this entire state to go ahead and kind of gin up support. And it worked for a little bit. When the polls rolled in at the primary, I took 13% of the vote, you know, like 12.4% or something like that. But I'll say this, that there's 13% of the patriots still here in North Dakota. I thank each and every one of them for their support. Oh, boy. We discussed on this show before how Kramer and Hovind, you know, they have a big following here in North Dakota. They do not. You got a couple of pockets, you know, I go ahead and praise them, whatever they're doing. But the majority of them, people don't like them. You know, they're not doing anything. Kevin Kramer, he seizes every opportunity for a photo op. You know, that's pretty much about it. And I couldn't even tell you what Hovind's doing. Oh boy. So we go ahead and see that every one of these people that I mentioned, every one of these departments I mentioned, they go ahead and they've got fraud up to yin yang. It's time to shut off. Just shut off any HHS funding whatsoever. Who's paying for this? And all these endless wars are doing is they're being financed by the big banks. Yeah. That's all that they are. You know, we watched a documentary on Vietnam here not too long ago. And the guy, when the president said to the general in charge, he goes, you know what? We're going to go to war, so draw me up a battle plan. Well, first thing he did, he's going to blockade Haiphong Harbor, and then he's going to blow up the railroad from China that come into North Vietnam. And the president says, no, you're not. Well, you told me to draw up a battle plan. That's my battle plan. We choke them off. We stifle the incoming supplies. Oh, no, we don't want that. That's because the banks were going ahead and funding both sides of the war. That can be the only explanation for that. I want to go ahead and send me a message saying, prove me wrong. You know, prove me wrong. It's always about the money. Back when we were on the gold and silver standard, you know, we always went ahead and we borrowed gold or silver from other countries, you know, and we paid them back. That's how it worked. That's how international finance worked. When we needed extra money, we go and we borrowed from countries, you know. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, there used to be a show on how banks got their start, and it started out with the village goldsmith. And pretty soon he was drawing money out of thin air, and yet taking in real money on loans. Don't ask me how that worked, but it explained it real well. And you can't find it on YouTube anymore. But it was quite interesting. And finally, it ended in disaster for him because there was a run on the bank. You know, so that's why I said, you know, people, we are heading for a depression that's going to go ahead and make the crash of 29 look like a popcorn fart in a windstorm. It's going to be nothing. All right. We are headed for a downfall so big, unless we do something drastic now. And one of them is getting rid of the Federal Reserve and going ahead and taking back our money supply. If you ever read your Constitution, you'll find out that Congress has delegated half their responsibility to other agencies. It was their job to coin and regulate money, and they turned it over to the Federal Reserve. All right. They couldn't deliver a declaration of war against Iraq, so they gave the President War Powers Act. And we had that idiot say, well, I actually voted for the war before I voted against it. Yeah. Then they made him the climate czar. Yeah. You know, all this time that we've gone ahead, and that's another thing that we've looked at, and I mentioned before, you know, I remember, you know, several climate global warming conventions taking place, you know. One was down in Peru and the other one was in Northern California somewhere. And on the day that this climate change thing did, it snowed at both places. You know, tell me that God doesn't have a sense of humor? Yeah, he does. And we go ahead and have to go ahead and acknowledge that. You know, when these people come out and tell you what they're doing, and they're not hiding it, that's God shooting arrows into the speech of evildoers. And I believe that's in Psalm 68 or something. Psalm 63. They encourage themselves in an evil manner. They talk of laying snares secretly. They say, who will see them? They devise iniquities. We have perfected a shrewd scheme. Both the inward thought and the heart of man are deep. But God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly they shall be wounded, so he will make them stumble over their own tongue. Yeah. That is God telegraphing what they're doing. We have perfected a shrewd scheme. Yeah, that's what the banking system is. They wanted the big bank thing back in 1913 or whatever it was. You know, they met on an island. Don't remember the details. We talked about it here before. They wanted to go ahead and devise a system so perfect that they would not assume any risk themselves, but the government would bail them out. So they come up with the Federal Reserve Act, which was gone ahead and instituted by Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, and I swear, Woodrow Wilson has been the biggest traitor up until Barack Obama to this country. Yeah. And the guy that followed him on the Democrat side, anyway, Joe Biden, you know, I saw a film here not too long ago where he was at an international convention. He was standing around, looking around and shaking hands with invisible people. Yeah, it was unbelievable. And then, of course, the Republicans were outraged at the extent of his dementia was not made known to them. We all knew it, you know. He couldn't form a recognizable sentence. So we go ahead and keep electing dirtbags into Congress that do not have a good standing in the church, and that's what it is. You need to go ahead and go to your district conventions and demand that you see a letter from their pastor stating that they are a member of the church in good standing. Because if you don't, you elect a dirtbag, you elect a moderate, who then, once they get in office, they drop their moderation, they turn hard left. You know, this is what we're seeing all over in the political spectrum of the United States. You know, it used to be that the Democrats, all right, they were pro-gun. They used to be, but they've been taken over by the radical left. But I am sitting here going to tell you that I stand for, I am pro-gun will always be, because that is the only way that you can stop yourself from becoming a slave. And what we have going on today is economic slavery in this country. They pay you just enough to live, and you're so busy trying to earn a living, all right, that you're not paying attention to what's going on in the real world. And we have the World Economic Forum that's trying to go ahead and has said that in 2030, you know, you're going to own nothing and you will like it. You know, yeah, because a major collapse is coming where you're going to be starving, right? You'll give up anything to go ahead and get a scrap of food. And that will be your rights. They've already have this plan laid out. There is a book on YouTube or a video on YouTube. It's about 2 hours and some odd minutes, 2 hours and 32 minutes long, I think. It's called Iron Mountain: Blueprint for Tyranny. I highly go ahead and recommend that you watch it, because what they detail in that book is exactly what's happening today. All right. Most notably is the battle for the environment. All right. Healthcare was going to become a crisis. Yeah, they managed to do that. So there you have it, people. Well, it's about time to go ahead and wrap up this segment today. We kept her under an hour. I was expecting to go longer with all the material I had. But thank you for joining us on Friday Frenzy, and we hope you have a blessed week, and you all have a good weekend in the Lord. All right. We shall talk to you people later. Stay strapped, my friends.